The emergency room doors burst open at 11:32 p.m., and Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her charts to see two soldiers carrying a third man between them. "Gunshot wound to the shoulder," one of them barked, his face pale with worry. The injured man wore a standard infantry uniform, dirt-smeared and torn, his dog tags catching the fluorescent lights as they laid him on the gurney. Sarah had treated dozens of soldiers in her 5 years at this base hospital, but something about this one made her pause. His eyes, despite the pain etched across his face, held a sharpness that seemed to calculate every detail of the room. "Before we begin, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. What's his name?" Sarah asked, pulling on her gloves as nurses swarmed around them. The soldiers exchanged a glance that lasted a fraction too long. "Jackson. Private Michael Jackson," the taller one said, but his voice wavered slightly. Sarah nodded and began cutting away the uniform sleeve, her trained hands working quickly to assess the damage. The wound was clean, a through and through that had missed major arteries, but as she worked, she noticed something odd. The man's physical conditioning was beyond that of a typical infantry soldier. His muscle definition and the calluses on his hands suggested years of specialized training. "Private Jackson, can you tell me what happened?" Sarah asked gently, preparing an IV line. The man's jaw tightened, and he met her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Training accident, ma'am. Wrong place. Wrong time." His voice was steady despite the pain, controlled in a way that spoke of discipline far beyond his supposed rank. Sarah had grown up in a military family. Her father had been a colonel, and she knew how soldiers carried themselves. This man had the bearing of someone who gave orders, not followed them. As she sutured the wound, one of the soldiers who'd brought him in kept checking his watch, his anxiety palpable in the sterile air. "Doc, how long will this take?" "We need to get him back to barracks," Sarah frowned. "He needs observation. I'm keeping him overnight." The soldier's face went rigid. "That's not possible." "He has to." The injured man cut him off with a subtle shake of his head, and the soldier immediately fell silent. Sarah's suspicion deepened. A private didn't silence his fellows with just a look. At 2:17 a.m., Sarah returned to check on her patient and found him sitting up in bed, studying a medical chart with the focused attention of someone reading a battlefield report. "You should be resting," she said softly from the doorway. He looked up, and for a moment his guard dropped. Exhaustion lined his face, but something else flickered there too. Resignation, perhaps, or the weight of secrets too heavy to carry alone. "Can't sleep, Doc. Old habit." He set the chart down carefully. "Thank you for your work tonight. You're very skilled." Sarah pulled up a chair beside his bed. "I've been doing this long enough to know when something doesn't add up, Private Jackson." She kept her voice low, aware that even at this hour, hospitals had ears. "Your wound pattern suggests precision fire from a high-caliber weapon, not a training accident. Your physical condition indicates Special Forces training at minimum. And your friends out there were more terrified of you missing some appointment than of you dying." She leaned forward slightly. "So who are you really?" The man was silent for a long moment, his fingers absently touching the bandage on his shoulder. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weariness of a man who'd been living a lie too long. "If I tell you, it could put you in danger. Sometimes ignorance is protection, Doctor." But Sarah shook her head. "I took an oath to do no harm and to heal. If you're in danger, if someone tried to kill you tonight, I need to know to properly treat you. And maybe..." She hesitated. "Maybe you need someone outside your world to talk to." He studied her face, seeming to weigh her words against years of ingrained secrecy. Then he sighed, a sound that seemed to release more than just air. "My name is Commander James Sullivan. I run a joint special operations task force that doesn't officially exist. We handle threats to national security that are too sensitive for conventional forces." He watched her reaction carefully. 3 days ago, we intercepted intelligence about a planned attack on a military supply convoy. Tonight was supposed to be a routine surveillance operation, but someone leaked our position. My team got me out, but they couldn't take me to a military facility without exposing who I am. Sarah felt her heart racing. Why the disguise? Why not come in as a commander? James's expression darkened. "Because we have a mole. Someone high up in the command structure is feeding information to enemy operatives. If word got out that I survived tonight, they'd try again, and next time they might succeed. Right now, the mole thinks Private Jackson was just unlucky collateral damage in a raid gone wrong. He shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. My team and I have been working for 6 months to identify the traitor. We're close, but I need to stay hidden just a little longer. The implications crashed over Sarah like a wave. She was sitting beside a man who commanded shadow operations, who held secrets that could shake the foundations of national defense. What happens now? She asked quietly. James reached into his jacket, the one his men had left draped over the chair, and pulled out a burner phone. At 0700, I'm supposed to receive confirmation about the mole's identity. My team has been running a controlled leak operation, feeding different information to different suspects. Whoever shows up at the wrong location tomorrow will reveal themselves. But Sarah's doctor instincts kicked in. You can't leave yet. That wound could get infected and you lost blood. You need at least 24 hours of rest. James shook his head. I don't have 24 hours, doctor. Lives are at stake. That convoy I mentioned? It's carrying medical supplies to a forward operating base where 300 soldiers are waiting. If the attack succeeds because I wasn't there to stop it? He didn't finish the sentence, but the guilt in his eyes completed the thought. Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. Then we compromise. You rest until 6:30 a.m. I'll monitor you closely, give you IV antibiotics and fluids to speed your recovery. At 0645, I'll discharge you, but you take the medication I prescribe, and you promise me you'll get proper follow-up care when this is over. She crossed her arms. I don't care if you're a commander or a general. In this hospital, you're my patient, and I'm not letting you leave here at half strength. A smile tugged at James's lips, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. You're pretty tough, Doc. Remind me never to disobey a direct order from you. Sarah smiled back, feeling an unexpected connection to this man who carried the weight of invisible wars. She spent the next few hours monitoring his vitals, changing his IV bags, and occasionally finding him watching her with an expression that mixed gratitude with something deeper, perhaps the simple relief of being seen as human, not just as a weapon or a rank. At 6:30 a.m., as promised, Sarah began his discharge paperwork. The phone in James's pocket buzzed and his entire demeanor shifted, the commander returning to replace the vulnerable patient. He read the message and his eyes widened. They found him. Colonel Robert Hayes, my own deputy commander for the past 2 years. The betrayal in his voice was raw. He's been feeding our operations to a foreign intelligence network in exchange for offshore payments. What will you do? Sarah asked, her hand unconsciously reaching for his. James looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. What I was trained to do. Protect the people who can't protect themselves. Stop the convoy ambush. Bring Hayes to justice. He stood, steadier than he had any right to be after the night he'd endured. But I want you to know, Dr. Chen, Sarah, that tonight, in this room, I felt like a person again, not just a rank and a mission number. Thank you for that. Sarah pulled out a card with her personal number. When this is over, when you can talk about it, I'd like to hear how it ended. And maybe you can tell me your real story, not just the classified version. James took the card, tucking it carefully into his pocket like it was precious intelligence. It's a date, Doc, I promise. He squeezed her hand once, then walked toward the door with the careful movements of a man who knew pain, but refused to let it slow him down. As he left, Sarah watched through the window as 2 black SUVs pulled up, and James transformed once more, shoulders back, command presence radiating from him like heat. He climbed into the lead vehicle and they disappeared into the dawn. She didn't know if she'd ever see him again, but she knew she'd treated more than just a soldier that night. She'd glimpsed the human cost of invisible wars, the men and women who sacrificed their identities to keep others safe. 3 weeks later, Sarah received a single text from an unknown number. Mission accomplished. Convoy safe. Coffee next week? She smiled, typing back a single word. Definitely. Sometimes the heroes we never see are the ones who save us all, carrying secrets in silence, bearing wounds both visible and hidden. And sometimes, a doctor in an emergency room becomes an unexpected ally in the most dangerous kind of battle, the one fought in shadows, where trust is the rarest currency and human connection becomes an act of courage all its own.